Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of Certified Forgotten. This is an uncertified episode, which means we're going to be talking about a relatively new release, an actual new release as of this weekend. Sometimes we talk to an excellent guest about a film that they bring to us that was released many, many years ago. But I'll tell you what, if this is your first episode of Certified Forgotten, you're wondering where we got the name. The idea is some films are certified fresh, some films are certified rotten. Our films are certified forgotten. It just means we talk about niche and underseen horror. Is that right, Donato? Is that what we do? We talk about the little guys?
Yeah, when we've got those guest episodes and we bring wonderful, talented people on who want to bring us things like The Pit and Patchwork, etc., etc., I think you hit the nail on the head. We like to swing out for little guys, but sometimes we just want to talk about new upcoming movies, and we must appease the SEO gods with the sacrifice of our content. So I don't know. This week, I think it's very thematic that we talk about the movie we are going to talk about.
Yes. So, a little bit of context for those folks who did not get a chance to come say hi. Last weekend, as of this recording, we were in Brooklyn, in New York City, for the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival. This is our third year at the festival. We're, gracious to the hosts for inviting us out to talk to one of their featured filmmakers about a new release. And this year, we got to talk to this week's filmmaker about their movie. So if you got to see that, it was a full hour-long conversation. Great back and forth with Tina Romero, who is the director of Queens of the Dead, this week's film, of course. And we're not going to tell you everything that we talked about with her because A, those are her stories to share and her insights to offer. But B, we also just like to make sure that our guests at Brooklyn Horror get some shit they're not going to hear anywhere else. But what we can do now, with Tina not in the room, is we can tell you a little bit about our opinions of Queens of the Dead. So, Donato, are you ready? You want to get into this?
No, let's waste the listeners' time for another no. Yes, I think we should get into this. I think we should talk about it. And yeah, I mean, touching quickly on what we did in Brooklyn Horror, I do really. It's not regret. I like that we keep it a live episode, and you got to be there to do it. Like that's the exclusivity of it. We're going to Brooklyn Horror.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving everyone a show there, and not only that, but we tried something new in the sense that we just talked to a filmmaker about their movie for an hour versus trying to do a guest episode live. So I really enjoyed this year because we finally, I would say, cracked the code on how to do our live shows. Still
Yeah.
bring those conversation topics about indie horror, but have those conversations be about something that people have seen at the festival. And Tina was just absolutely just a gracious guest who I'm going to push to get on the podcast anyway, so we can actually record an
Yes.
episode with her and see what she brings to the table as a guest bringing us a film. But anyway, that's my jabbering. If you didn't hear it live, I'm sorry. We had a great convo, but I don't know. We got some stuff to say about the movie ourselves, and I think I can say that we both enjoyed it. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true.
It
Well,
is.
let's do a quick synopsis because this drops this weekend, the weekend that you're listening to this episode. It's playing in theaters in a lot of places, and hopefully that means that you're going to get a chance to go see it with some friends, bring some family, make an event out of it. But if you haven't, a quick plot synopsis for you. Life is hard for small business owners. When Dre loses the headliner for her much hyped drag show, she turns to Sam, an old friend and former performer, to help her pack the house. But Sam has two problems. First, he's not sure if he can still connect with Samantse, his onstage persona who died along with his confidence. And two, Brooklyn has just become ground zero to the zombie apocalypse, requiring Dre, Sam, and their ragtag group of drag queens and club kids to fight for their lives. The debut feature from Tina Romero, Queens of the Dead, is a horror comedy that can only be described in one word: fabulous. Donato, what'd you think of Queens of the Dead?
Good synopsis. I really enjoyed the fact that, listen, I'm the horror comedy guy. We've had that conversation a billion
We have.
times between me and you. So the fact that we can connect over a horror comedy excites me, obviously, number one. And number two, I really like that Tina Romero came into Queens of the Dead and it feels organic and authentic to her voice, not only because it's queer horror and she was a DJ in the queer nightlife scene in Brooklyn specifically, so it's very near and dear to her. The story she's telling is from so many personal upbringings, but being George Romero's daughter comes with certain legacy points, and I really, really enjoy the fact that she went out to create a movie that honors her father 100%, but it is her. This isn't like a nepotism play. This isn't a follow in footsteps and do exactly what daddy did kind of scenario. This is Tina going out and going, well, how do I make this legacy my own? How do I turn this into my take on a zombie film that, sure, it's got nods to Dawn of the Dead and things from the green paint on the zombies to other shambling influences, let's say, but this is never not Tina's movie. This is always her blood, her DNA, her everything. And I think like that is really important to the film's success. For all of, again, the nepotism comments that people could make in other movies, they're not here. This is just fun. It's just a good time. It's just joyful. And that's saying about a horror movie.
Yeah, I think so. You're the horror comedy guy. I am not the horror comedy guy. Cannot stand horror comedies. I will say that that was one of the things that I was most delighted by with Queens of the Dead is that a lot of movies try to be a comedy and a horror at the same time, and that doesn't work. We've had that conversation many times on the show. I will have that conversation with each and every one of our listeners in person if they would prefer. Strong, strong opinions about that. But what does work is horror movies about characters who happen to be funny. And I think that's one of the big distinctions for Queens of the Dead is that Tina, her co-writer, and her cast have managed to create this film that populates a lot of really interesting and funny people that have great reactions to outlandish shit that happens around them. And because of that, it works as a horror comedy because they're not, the film isn't trying to sort of do comedic beats, force comedic beats into horror. It just happens that there's a zombie outbreak in Brooklyn. Zombies are attacking this club. And if you were out and probably a little high or drunk and suddenly there was a zombie apocalypse, you would handle it in some pretty fucking weird ways too. So I think that that's, I mean, there were two things I think that that went into the movie thinking this is going to be make or break for me. One is, of course, the horror comedy thing, and the other is not being familiar with her work, not really knowing the name outside of a little bit of the academia stuff that she's done with her father's repertory and some of the University of Pittsburgh work. I didn't know if Tina Romero was somebody who was getting a shot because she's a really talented filmmaker, or if it was one of those, the asylum type things where they're like, this is a name people are going to know. Let's go find somebody, give them, a minimal amount to make a bare feature. And it's going to go. Tina's a real fucking deal. Extremely talented writer, director. I could not be happier to be a fan of hers now. And I think that was those were the distinction points. Was it going to work as a horror comedy? It does because it's funny and isn't trying to be, overly a comedy without just being funny. But I think this whole thing it is a celebration of what Tina Romero has learned from a life in the movie industry, from a life in Brooklyn, from her life in the club scene in Brooklyn, and how much of herself and her co-writer's attitude towards that is put out on the screen. I think that's wonderful.
And it really starts behind the camera. Obviously, this is where all movies start. They don't immediately get recorded and happen. But, one of the things I will mention from our chat is that Tina did point out, hey, I made a queer horror movie that is also, almost fully staffed and fully cast with queer representation. Like it is meant from the very start to be inclusive of that community. And it's very much meant to show how others can be welcomed into that community and so forth and so on. But the energy of the film and everything that it is like being built on, I don't think you would have the successful outcome without it being so authentically queer to start.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we see many times nowadays, it's the idea of like a white filmmaker trying to create a immensely black film, or somebody, a white director trying to create any kind of culture and not really getting there with the immersion. It just feels like somebody else on the outside trying to replicate what they know, where we know the best formula for that is to have the people, the demographic that the movie is about. Well, yeah, of course, that should be the cast, that should be the crew. So I think it really starts there, and it really starts with how many people just know organically how to create that experience on screen, and the way that comes through. And like, obviously I am saying this as a straight white male, so like this is being told to me by my friends 100%. Like, I've been welcomed into circles, I've been welcomed into places, and I definitely can see, but still I am not. So I again, just acknowledging that I am saying that as knowing who I am, but having plenty of people around me go, "Oh no, that's the real deal." So it's like I was also like the conversations they're having, I could hear what they're saying and then learn from them versus other films that would just be pandering or running off tropes, let's say.
Yeah, and I will add to that and say that I think that part of what makes Queens of the Dead so much fun as a queer horror film is it, and I don't want to take anything away from the specificity of it, but it does tell these stories in a way that is global and universal. I mean, that's the appeal of horror, right? Is horror tells stories that transcend nations, they transcend concepts of identity, concepts of gender. They're able to get to the heart of who we are as people and our connections as people. That's part of the beauty of it. And I think that's something that is fully on display here too. Is if you go into Queens of the Dead thinking that this is going to be a movie that is only for the queer community, the queer community is certainly going to get a fucking ton more out of it than people like you and me, Donato. There is a lot of specific insights, recollections. I mean, Tina, when we talked to her, talked a lot about generational trends within the queer community and how that shaped the characters that she and Aaron, her co-writer, wrote and put on the screen. But it's also just like it is stories about relationships. It's stories about, failures and standing on the precipice of making big life decisions and backing away because you don't have confidence in yourself. It's a story about family. It's a story about found family. And I don't care, found family is a particularly important concept to queer communities because a lot of them don't have the support of their, original family. But everybody has a found family. Anybody who's moved cities has a found family. Like all of this is something that everybody can relate to. So if you are someone that's looking at this and being like, yeah, all right, I'm excited about Queens of the Dead, good for Tina Romero, but like, is there going to be something in it for me? Yes, like horror is such a great vehicle for inclusivity because the things that make us happy and the things that scare us are two sides of the same coin. They're for everybody. So that's I agree with everything you said, but I want to put that out there too because I know there are going to be people that are sort of like, well, yeah, but it's not for me. It is for you. I promise it's for you.
Yeah, and it's also very gateway. And it was very funny because I brought that up in our chat with Tina, and I think she heard gateway, which like
Hmm.
I'll take that. I'll take that wordplay. Like that is kind of what it is. But what I was kind of referring to is the sense of well, we know what gateway horror is in general. Like usually that means like early horror movies that people see that welcome them into the genre and like the starting points, the movies that maybe aren't too intense but still deliver everything that like a horror film should be and like hold your hand welcoming you inside. And I think Queens of the Dead is a gateway horror film for maybe like certain communities that haven't gotten into horror as much as we have and stuff, and maybe like there is a barrier there. And I know that I can show my queer friends Queens of the Dead, and like they're gonna love so much about this. Like it is so it's funny,
Yeah.
it's bright, it's energetic, it's all these things that maybe let's say if 28 Days Later is too intense for someone, I can show them Queens of the Dead and they will just be like it's like a hug to them, welcoming them into horror. And I feel like that's so important in the sense where you know going along with like the universal nature of everything you're talking about and how it is meant for everybody. I think it's also important that a movie like this exists and can be like, hey, you go to your friends and go like, I want to show you a movie, and like I know you don't like horror, but I think this might change your mind a little bit. And I think Queens has that kind of effect. I think it's able to do that. So I think like that's even more impressive because you can be all the things that you said, but you can still be one of those like horror movies that still scares people away. And this, much like Jem Gerard's Slay, which came out last year, I believe, the movie that I joke about being like from Tuck Till Dawn because it's literally drag queen from dusk till dawn, and that's great. Like it's so fun, it's so funny, it's upbeat, and so much of it is representative of like drag culture, and that becomes the style because it is all style. Like drag culture, the cosmetics, the costumes, the wigs, everything about it is grand, it's theatrical. And Queens of the Dead really follows suit there, and it's a perfect combination, honestly. Like if you do a double feature and make that Slay and Queens of the Dead, they're so hand in hand. The DNA is streaming through both of them, and I say that as a compliment. These two
Yeah.
just they're confident queer horror films that don't shy away from even the little meticulous details. Like there's no breadcrumbs, there's no throwing bones here. Like, representation isn't just something that's tossed in. Everything here is meant to like inform the film and influence the film, and those same elaborate, flamboyant, extravagant attributes, they're just such a blast to blend with horror, because horror is so dark and moody and dreadful, and then you like juxtapose that with all these roast gags and the comedy and the humor. It just really works. So I would stress anybody who wants a comparison point, or wants a double feature, at Slay and Queens of the Dead. Like, they go so well together.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the cast too, because I think that's I don't even want to call it the secret. It's the obvious weapon. It's the not secret weapon for this film, is the fact that this is a group of actors that are probably not super well known, with the possible exception of Katie O'Brien, who has that Mission Impossible cachet, and of course was fucking incredible in Love Lies Bleeding. Very, very talented actress. Absolutely should and will have an amazing career. No questions there. But a lot of the other performers are folks that are either relatively new to the film scene or have been working kind of other mediums. And I use as kind of the big example there Jaquel Spivey, who's the main character, Sam Samonse. Jaquel is probably best known, if you're a musical theater nerd, for his performance in A Strange Loop, which was the Tony-winning Broadway musical from a few years ago about an usher in a movie theater who's confronting their feelings about life, the universe, and everything. And the performance that Jaquel gives in this is so good. It was just one of those things where you're like, oh, eventually this actor is going to be a headliner. They will have a TV show, a movie, or something to their name. Like, this person is going to be a name in Hollywood. And you just happen to be the film that kind of, not their very first film. They did the Mean Girls reboot for Paramount or whatever it was technically their first film credit. But this is somebody who is a few years away from breaking out in a big, big fucking way. And you always get excited for a little movie when they happen to stumble into a big name actor right before they break out. I mean, I think of what was the Michael Fassbender horror film from a few years ago, Blood Lake or Blood Simple, or whatever it's called. Like, you always are kind of like, oh, you punched above your weight class. You just happen to recognize talent before everybody else did, and were able to make that happen. There's something special about those movies that get actors on the way up. And there's a couple of those in Queens of the Dead. I also want to shout out Jack Haven. Jack Haven, who folks may know from, and I always get the name of this wrong, not We're All Going to the World's Fair, the TV Glow. I can't remember the title. Help me out here,
I
Donato.
saw the TV Glow.
I saw the TV Glow. Thank you. Jack Haven, they are, in this playing completely against type, non-binary in real life, playing high femme. Tina's words, not mine. I don't know those words in the movie itself. But another great performance that shows off their comedic range. And there are just so many little actors in this where you think, oh, that's a real actor that's going to have a real career. That's a real actor that's going to have a real. It's not stunt casting. It's not cute. Yeah, Tom Savini shows up. Of course, Tom Savini shows up. Tom Savini's going to show up in this. But it truly is this thing where you recognize talent again and again and again. And the best thing that you can do as a small independent film is have real fucking good actors. There are so many movies that have bigger budgets than this, but they don't have talent, and you feel it and you know the difference.
Yeah, I'll say, like, one thing with the film is it has such a big ensemble, and that is mostly complementary. But having such a big ensemble, you're gonna want to spend time. You're going to spend more time
Yeah.
with certain cast members, and you're just not going to have that. So, like, there is a little bit of disappointment here and there, just over the sense of, you have so many great characters, and I do want to see, like, I want to spend as much time as possible with all of them, and that's just not possible in a movie like Queens. But what you said is 100% correct. Like, because for me, like, it goes across the board. Like, Tomas Matos is playing Nico, aka Scrumptious, this much younger and newer, online influencer queen. And there's a little bit of, like, jealousy there, because they're still on the way up and they haven't
Mm-hmm.
reached the heights that others have. So, like, I really think Tomas did a fantastic job. Number one, is being incredibly entertaining and incredibly just, like, fluid with everything. Like, the way that they are able to deliver their, like, roasts is so quick, and it's like, I'm just so impressed with the comedic timing alone. But then you go over to the other side of it, and you have Quincy Dunn Baker playing Barry, who is the token straight of the movie, and he is obviously the proxy for any kind of Joe Rogan podcast listener, conspiracy theorist who doesn't. It's not that they are hateful or bigoted; they are just hearing the wrong things. And there's such a wonderful exploration of that character, because in other horror movies we've seen that character, and like they're the one that dies first, because it's this
Right.
idea of, oh yeah, you're gonna misgender, you're not gonna understand what's going on, then like you're gonna be punished for it.
Right.
And listen, if you were doing that actively, of course be punished for it. But I like the conversation that Queens is having, where Tina's pushing for more than just the basic understanding of what's going on. Like Tina's pushing for actual introspection and analysis, and being like, okay, so what if we have that character get stuck with all of the other queer characters, and now he is forced to like learn from them, and he is forced to be around them. He's out of his little Staten Island bubble. He's out of all this stuff. And I think there's just
Hmm.
such a more meaningful character dynamic there, because you do have Barry, like you see the human part of him, and he starts understanding, and he starts getting into it. And I think that's really important for Queens, because it avoids being, once again, I'll say, like the pandery kind of simple take on queer horror, where maybe it's more rage and angst, and maybe it's more just not understanding fully. Like they don't have the weapons to have the full conversation, where Tina is willing to push for every one of these characters, and take you within the community infighting, take you within the generational dynamics of like older queens and like up and coming queens and all that stuff, and like making those conversations mean something, instead of them just being these floating kind of ambiguous, I don't know, like the low hanging fruit, I guess I would call it. Like there's a real push to have thoughts here that other films don't want to have.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about the music too, because we talked about that with Tina, and I know that you're a particularly big fan of Blitz Berlin, the group that did the composing for this particular film. I, for my part, am a really big fan of Kesha. Kesha's everywhere on my running mix. Like her entire first album is basically my running playlist, and so I was really excited to see several Kesha songs, or I should say, several versions of a Kesha song, appear in this movie. But I would like to know, I would, talk a little bit about your love of Blitz Berlin and, what they bring to the soundtrack, both in terms of throwbacks to the original Night of the Living Dead series, Dawn of the Dead in particular, but also creating something unique and Brooklyny and 2010s.
Yeah, I mean, I have been, let me put it this way. Every film I've seen on the festival circuit this year that I have sat there and gone, oh shit, like the score is actually really good in this. It's been Blitz Berlin. I saw Sweetness at South by Southwest, Deathstalker at Fantastic Fest, Silent Night, Deadly Night, the new one coming out in December, and Fantastic Fest, and now Queens of the Dead. And they're all Blitz Berlin, but they're also perfectly calibrated to the moment, because I mean, Deathstalker's the easy one. Like that is literally a creation that is a remake of a Swords and Sandals movie produced by Slash. So you have metal influences and all that stuff running through it. And they meet that moment so fantastically. It is a blast. It is just in your face, kind of like sword fighting metal tunes. And hell yeah. Like I can't say more than hell yeah on that. But Sweetness, on the other end, is about like a pop star that gets kidnapped, and it's like a torture film in that sense, and they're able to navigate those tension moments and like all that other stuff. So like two very different films, but influenced by pop culture and all that stuff. And I mean, Queens, it's the Brooklyn club rave scene, so like you have these rhythmic moments of just such fun like club music. Like they nail the actual aspect of like losing yourself to the bass beats, and losing yourself to the amplifiers just like bouncing like off your ears. And it doesn't get better than the closing credit song, which Tina is obsessed with, and rightfully so. Perfect line during the movie. Somebody gets axed, and you just hear in their voice like, I have an axe wound, and they sample that line and turn it into one of my favorite created for movie original songs I've heard in so long. But just to say, I mean, we talk about the idea of like, there's scores are so interesting because a mediocre score you don't hear, it just doesn't register. But a good score is the one that makes you go, who wrote that? Like, who did that? And more times in the horror sphere, I guess right now I would say, and especially the indie horror sphere, it's been Blitz Berlin. So Tina collaborated with the right group for this one because
Yeah.
I don't think you have the energy and the excitement and entertainment of Queens of the Dead without them doing what they did, and to what you said before, sampling some of the old Romero suites. So you get the new and the old coming together, where you hear the right notes and it brings you back. But then boom, you're right in Queens and you're right in Tina's sphere, and it's all her.
Yeah. Um, Man, there's like both a lot more and not too much more to say about it.
Well, I mean, the
I
glitter
will.
zombies. Let's
Well,
talk about the
yeah. Let's
horror.
talk about
Yeah.
the glitter. Let's talk about the glitter zombies too. I want to note that this movie intentionally throws back to George Romero's films with the green painted zombies. It is. We talked about this with Tina. It's so we've done so many different versions of zombies by now that actually feels almost revolutionary. Now it feels fresh as a way in a way that it didn't, or wouldn't have, even around the Shaun of the Dead era. Um, and I think that's a testament to how genre or subgenres kind of evolve over time too. Like it's exciting to think about the fact that somebody that a genre can stray from its roots and then come back to its roots, and in the straying and coming back, it can really feel like, oh, this is new again. Everything old is new again. But talk a little bit about the glitter zombies in particular, Donato, because I know you were obsessed.
I'm obsessed because it bucks the trend so hard, and we are in this moment where what kind of zombie do you want? I mean, The Walking Dead, obviously Greg Nicotero just crushing the idea of rotten flesh and the traditional zombie take. Tina talks about George Romero, like Dawn of the Dead, like you said, green paint. It's just some green paint, and that's all they needed. So in my mind, like it's always so interesting to see how filmmakers approach their zombies and how they approach like the undead and the afterlife and it being rotten flesh and those things. And what I love is that Tina said, "Fuck all that. Like we're making Queens of the Dead. There's still going to be some glamour. We're going to take it where it needs to be," and creates this hybrid of a zombie that is still completely decked out in costume and in the right appropriate kind of lavishness, but also they're all dusted with like glitter. And so like you have this skin texture that is very thriller-esque. Michael Jackson's Thriller obviously is a huge influence on this movie, as is Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and that is both very indicative of what is going on here. So you have these sunken-eyed, still corpse-like zombies, but they look like they're ready to go walk the runway. Like they look like they are ready for their centerfold photo shoot, and that is such a unique take on it because Tina like immediately says like I'm gonna play my own rules. I don't care if no one's done that before. I don't care how like even nonsensical they are, and I don't mean that as a detriment, but like we're doing zombies with makeup, and you can do whatever you want with it, but making them ready to go to the club is a choice. But with this movie, it works perfectly because it just goes right in with everything that's going on. The idea that the survivors have to fight off these zombies and they themselves are like using weapons they've created with rhinestones and paper clips and like stuff like that. So there is there is always the shiny bright disco ball element to Queens of the Dead, and that never fades away. And I think that it just creates the right atmosphere for what Tina is trying to drive forward. Like she is always in control of her vision, and whether you're not on board with that, sure, like it doesn't matter at that point because she knows the movie she wants to make. She doesn't care that it doesn't look like anything you've seen before, and that's on purpose because she's doing like something that isn't popular as much as queer representation is getting better and as much as everyone's fighting for that to see more of it. Something like Queens is still unseen. Something like Queens being so unabashedly queer is still something that is reserved for, let's say, streaming or let's say other places that aren't mainstream theaters. So it's really nice to see a movie like Queens of the Dead, like you said before, going to theaters first, like Shudder being like, no, we're going to get this movie, we're going to put it in theaters and then it's going to go to streaming. Like we're going to give it the life that we think it deserves and take it as far as we can. So yeah, I think that goes right hand in hand with glitter zombies. Like, what sense do they make? I don't know. Who gives a fuck? What do zombies make sense in the first place? Like,
Very true. And that feels like a good place to remind everybody here at the end that Queens of the Dead is available in theaters this weekend. If you visit www.queensofthedead.com, they have set up a just a little guide so you can put in your zip code. It'll tell you if it's playing at a theater near you. If you are in Pennsylvania, like I am, you will be able to see it in most of the major cities. If you are in New York, where Donato is currently, you'll also be able to see it in most major cities. And it'll also be playing in LA. Outside of those three, I don't know. I have not Googled any other places, but it is getting a good sized rollout. It is going to be available somewhere near you. So go to queensofthedead.com, check it out, see if it's playing in your nearby theater. Donata, you were a busy, busy guy during Brooklyn Horror this year. So if folks want to stay connected to the reviews and the Halloween goodness that you are working on, where do they follow you online?
You can follow me, Matt Donato, at Donatobomb, DonatoBomb, and that is going to be Letterboxed. That's going to be Instagram, and that's going to be Blue Sky the most. A little TikTok here and there, but still ramping that one up. So for my reviews specifically, as Mr. Monagle said, I was pretty busy, but I was also pretty busy having fun. So I have to write all those reviews still. So you're in luck. I
Mm.
haven't even posted my Brooklyn Horror reviews yet. I just got Queens of the Dead up first. So that is now live. But yeah, you're going to find those on Daily Dead. You're going to find those on some other horror websites. But as long as you are following my socials, I will tell you exactly where they are.
And it might even be possible that we'll find some of them on www.certifiedforgotten.com, which is our website. Visit there for some of the best in original film essays and coverage of underseen horror. And if you'd like to, you can also find me. I'm on Blue Sky, Monagle at bsky.social. That's it. That's the only one I use. As a reminder, we are running our call it a pledge drive, call it a subscriber push. This October, you can get the first month of Certified Forgotten for only $1. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It is the change in your loose change drawer or in this cushion seats of your car. So if you like original horror criticism, if you like original horror coverage, and you want to support an indie worker owned publication, visit www.certifiedforgotten.com today. That's it from Donato and I. We'll see you next week.